Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, the unit was pretty impressive in 2023, finishing 27th in total defense, giving up 331.8 yards per game, which ranked 16th in passing defense, giving up 183 yards per game, and 16th in sacks per game, getting 2.79 sacks a game. Along the defensive line, they do lose Judge Culpepper, but they do return just about everybody else. How did they look this spring?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good unit. They always seem to play pretty well. Franco Cam, their coach, came in last year. I think he's just a super energetic guy. He's got NFL experience. He was a great college player as well, and they really like him. I think he's good. But I think Darius Alexander is the guy who will become, the quote unquote household name on that line this year. He was good last year. I thought he'd be a little better, but I thought he was pretty solid. They got Kayvon Butler, DeAndre Reagan, Jerry Peters, Deshaun Holt, Eshaun Carter, Travion Ford. They have a lot of bodies. I think it's a deep unit. That's almost the unit that seems like recession proof on Toledo. I mean, no matter what, every year even last season, they lost. I'm drawing a blank now. Mr. Irrelevant. Oh my goodness, I forget his name. Got drafted by the Rams. Lost some.
Deshaun Johnson.
Yeah, Deshaun Johnson. Jeez. And Jamal Hines and some guys who just were incredibly productive. And I mean, I didn't think there was any dramatic fall off or anything. I mean, they're always going to have a pretty good, bodies and productive guys at that unit. So I don't think it's a huge issue. I would expect D-line to be, pretty serviceable this season.
Moving over to the linebackers, they do lose leading tackler Dallas Gint, but do return Daniel Bolden, among others. Kind of how did that group look this spring, and did kind of anyone step up to take on the role vacated by Dallas Gant?
I mean, I think this is the shakiest unit on the team. Gant was just really, really good. Obviously, tons of tackles. He was just Mr. Reliable, I think. You always kind of knew what you were going to get with him. He was going to play well. He was a great leader as well, good presence in the locker room. Jackson Barrow will be someone. You heard a little bit about him a couple years ago. Not as much last year, was injured. Chris D'Apollonia is a sophomore, or he might actually be a redshirt. No, he's a sophomore because he played more than 4 games last season. He's kind of the next great linebacker at Toledo, in my opinion. I mean, he was a really good special teams player last season. Made some plays in the spring game as well. Someone to kind of maybe put an asterisk next to his name and pay attention to him this season. Malachi Davis is a guy who was scout team player of the year several times last year. Those guys seem to pan out, it seems like, when you do some things as a young guy, when, there's not a whole lot of recognition, but you come to practice every day and do well. I think he kind of bodes well for the future. But Bolden, I mean, it's big that he's back. I mean, he's been around forever. Suffered, multiple season-ending injuries and came back and was still really good last year. So he's going to lead that unit, and he's just a great overall presence for the defense.
Is there anything you can tell us about West Virginia transfer Lance Dixon and maybe kind of how he might fit into this offense and into this defense in 2024?
Yeah, great question. I mean, that was a bad oversight by me. I should have mentioned him. I think he's going to be a guy who he's got a chance to be really good. He came a little late in the process. We're just, getting his feet and everything during spring practice, but the coaches are very excited about him. Teammates are excited about him. Obviously was a very heralded recruit, back in the day. I think he definitely is going to step in and maybe be a starter from day one.
So in terms of returning production and starters, the defensive backfield seems to take a pretty big hit. They lose safeties Nate Bauer, Zachary Ford, and cornerbacks Chris McDonald's and RJ Delancey III, and future NFL first round cornerback, we all assume Quinion Mitchell. They do return safeties MACtion Hook and Emmanuel McNeil. They bring in cornerback Jadarius Perkins from Florida. What can you tell us about this new look defensive backfield?
Yeah, I mean, my goodness, could you lose any more production than that? It's pretty startling, I think. Safety will be okay, though. I mean, MACtion Hook is really good. I mean, a surefire all-MAC guy. He'll probably be a draft pick next year. And then Emmanuel McNeil Warren, I mean, he really, really showed out last year, made a freshman All-America team, I believe. So I'm not super worried about that area, but cornerback, I mean, you lose a first round draft pick, you lose McDonald, who is a fringe, 7th round undrafted free agent guy. And then Delancey didn't even start. And a lot of people thought he should have been all MAC last year. So, I mean, it's just an embarrassment of riches at quarterback last year for Toledo. But one thing they have on their side is Corey Parker, the cornerbacks coach, who's just unbelievable. Just oozes charisma. I'll actually have a story on him this week because not only does he have Quinion Mitchell getting drafted, but he's got 3 of his former high school players are going to be drafted this week. He was the head coach at River Rouge at Michigan, built them into a huge powerhouse program. So he is just a guy you trust. But then, I mean, Braden Alls is a local kid from Toledo, went to Central Catholic, which is a great, high school in the state. They won a lot of state titles. He's the next great Toledo cornerback, in my opinion. I think he's going to do great things. Perkins, you mentioned, transfer from Florida. They like him. There's another transfer from Youngstown State, Zeke Blake, who you hear his name an awful lot that's mentioned. Nasir Bowers, Andre Fuller are guys that were here last year, played some. I think they'll, play some again this season. But as much as they lost, I still think that's going to be kind of a cornerstone of the defense. Are they going to be as good? I mean, it's hard to be as good when you have like a top 15, top 20 draft pick that you're losing. But I don't think there's going to be like some crazy drop off. I expect them to have one of the best pass defenses in the MAC again this season.
If you had to pick only one defensive player to kind of have their breakout in 2024, who would that be?
Yeah, Braden Alls, no doubt. I think he's going to go from someone who played sparingly and was kind of a special teams guy to being all MAC. I mean, he was just so good in high school. He came from a great program. You just kind of see the progression that he's made this spring. They've made a point to kind of, illustrate that he's the kind of the next guy in line. And I really expect big things from him.